Hey guys, welcome back to Andy's Dinosaur Reviews, and we have a really cool figure to take a look at today as I have just recently acquired from Target.com the brand new Jurassic World Camp Cretaceous Dino Escape Ocean Protector Mosasaurus. This is only the second time that we've received one of these larger scale Mosasaurus figures in the Mattel line, and it's definitely a figure that I feel like is a long time coming as far as a second release goes, because we got the first one very early on in the line, and now that line has been out for quite a few years, and nothing aside from like minis and stuff Mosasaurus related, so it's really exciting to now have a new version of the Mosasaurus. The only downside, in my opinion, straight away that I can see with the figure is that the paint scheme isn't all that different from the previous release, and I personally would have preferred that they had switched it up and give it maybe a little bit of a flashier look or something. It definitely has a different color than the original version did. I will bring the original one in to take a look at it with this one, but this one definitely looks like it's got a very similar color scheme, minus the fact that this one seems to have just like white splotches all over the place. But as far as the box art goes, we do have the really nice Jurassic World Camp Cretaceous logo up there, as well as the Dino Escape logo down here. And one very interesting aspect about this figure is stated right here, and it states that it is made from 1 pound of ocean-bound plastic, and that, I think, is insanely cool on the part of Mattel. So that is definitely something that I was unaware of until recently, and I thought that was just like the coolest idea on the part of Mattel to use ocean-bound plastic to actually create your Mosasaurus. And then if we turn the box around, on the back here we have more images of our Mosasaurus, as well as, again, a little area stating that it is made from 1 pound of plastic sourced within 50 kilometers of waterways in areas lacking formal waste collection systems. So super cool on the part of Mattel to actually use that in the creation of this Mosasaurus. And you can get a nice sneak peek of the Mosasaurus back here. It kind of looks like it's not actually this figure though, because I believe this one has some tail articulation, and I don't actually see the tail articulation on the figure here on the back. Kind of looks like it could potentially be the original Mosasaurus, but who knows? Either way, I am really psyched to get this figure out and take a look at it, so let's go ahead and break it out of its box right now. So here is our very large Mosasaurus, and straight out of the package, I must say that I think I like this version better than the original version. Like, the coloration looks really nice on this version, and an area that I was actually unaware of that has a little extra color variation is the lower part of the stomach has like a bluish gray, and that looks really nice on the figure. And another thing that I can straight away notice is that the fin area of the Mosasaurus, the flipper type area, definitely has a very different feel compared to the original release, so that is definitely really cool. You can without question feel the fact that this was made with ocean-bound plastic, so that's definitely pretty cool as well. But again, first glance, it looks really nice, so let's go ahead and get a closer look at it right now. Now, the actual sculpt of this definitely looks like it is pretty much the same, or at least very similar to the original version, but we're going to look over it again anyway because it has been quite a long time since we've done that. So looking up here at the head sculpt of your Mosasaurus, it does have some pretty nice texturing to it. It's not super vibrant like we would probably see on current Mattel figures, even though this is a current Mattel figure, but it seems as though like the primary body is without question reused from the original Mosasaurus. And you can definitely see that, again, the actual texturing here to the face does look nice. It really does. I'm not complaining about that, but it's just not quite as vibrant, I feel like, as what we would see on a newly sculpted Mattel figure. But you can also see that the lower jaw sports some beautiful texturing to the skin. And you can really see what I was saying with those white speckles. Like, they are just absolutely abundant throughout the entire head sculpt of this Mosasaurus. They are just everywhere, almost a little overbearing at certain points, but it does play off of that really dark bluish purple type color pretty nicely, I will say that. It's definitely like a blue, it's a very strange shade of color, very similar to like a purple, but at the same time similar to a dark blue. We have a really nice light blue eye with a nice black pupil, and that does look pretty nice, and the light blue absolutely plays off of that darker coloration beautifully, and really highlights the eye due to the rest of the head up there being pretty dark. The jaw is articulated, of course, like it always is on the Mosasaurus, and you can see a really nice looking inside of the mouth. Beautiful coloration for the inside of the mouth. I really quite like the color that's chosen there. You can see the tongue inside the mouth as well as the teeth. The teeth do appear to be painted pretty nicely. No real sloppiness or anything there. You can see the teeth on the upper jaw also look quite nice, and the side of the mouth here also sports that really nice coloration, as well as a gorgeous gloss coat inside the mouth, so that everything looks wet like it really would in real life. And you can definitely see that the teeth on the inside of the mouth up here are included, but unfortunately they are not painted, which I think is something that Mattel should have without question done. Taking a look at the top of the head, you can see the nostrils up here, and the texturing to the skin, the scaling and everything up here looks really quite nice, a lot nicer than what we see on the side of the face. As we lead back into the body, you can start to see that kind of armored type of a look for the back of the Mosasaurus, but what you can also see is that there is just a ton of those white speckles. Like, it almost looks like somebody was spray painting something white near this, and the white spray paint has just kind of like littered all over this. Very similar, I would think, to something like that, which I'm still not entirely sure how I feel about those white speckles. I kind of like them, but at the same time, they are a little overbearing in certain areas and kind of look a little out of place, but it does play off of the darker coloration pretty well, so those white speckles stand out a lot. And Mattel does usually include a speckling on their figures, but it's just not usually this bright. As we move along the body, you can continue to see that the actual texturing looks pretty nice, and you have some like really nice structure to the animal right there. You could see like some tensing and stuff in the neck region. As you lead down into the flipper does look really nice. The actual detailing aspect of the flipper is beautifully done. It actually has a very glossy look to it. I feel like the Mosasaurus in general should have probably had a glossy look because it's an aquatic species. It would obviously be wet, but it seems like only the flippers and the tail does. You can see the underside also looks quite nice. On the underside in general of the Mosasaurus, we have a beautiful kind of a light gray or an off-white for the underside coloration, and it looks really, really nice. And the actual texturing to the underside of the Mosasaurus looks beautiful as well. Unfortunately, the white coloration does cut off here before we get to the tail. And just because we're down here, here is the Jurassic Facts app for this Mosasaurus if you would like to add this to your collection. But again, leading up into the side of the Mosasaurus, you could see that really nice light blue coloration here in the stomach region. It's like a variation of light blue or light gray, and it looks really nice on the figure. But I will say one thing I'm noticing as I look through this is that there is definitely a lot less color variation on this one in comparison to the original. The original actually did have a little bit more color variation than what we're seeing, like specifically on the flippers and stuff. Like, we'll go to the rear flipper here as I knock the backdrop down. And the rear flipper, you can see, again, really beautiful sculpt, pretty nice looking tone of color that they've applied to it, but the original one had like some variation of color on the flippers, and you don't see that on these ones. Like, it is just strictly this coloration that you see, this dark blue. And there was also a little extra color variation that kind of ran through the side of the original Mosasaurus, which you don't see on this one either. So definitely a little bit less color variation on this, and my first impressions were that I actually thought I liked this one a little better, but looking at it now, I think I might like the original one a little better than this. But one area that this one has that the original did not have is articulation, and you can see here the figure comes just with the torso, basically the body, separate, and then you have to apply the flippers and the tail, which is one reason why you see this seam. Like, it's not getting on there any better than that. So there is a pretty apparent seam right here, at least on mine. I don't know if they will all have that. But you can again see that there is some nice articulation right here in the tail, and that is one area that the original Mosasaurus lacked. As we continue to run along the tail, you can see that the actual detailing aspect looks really beautiful out here. You have some nice ridges that run along the top of the tail, and then you reach the end of the tail and you have that really cool kind of a trademark ridge line to the tail of the Mosasaurus. Beautiful detailing out here. The scale detail is actually really quite vibrant out here on the tail, I think more so than what we see on the body itself. But this area here looks like it should have like some extra articulation because it has like a seam. It really looks like it should articulate, but it's not at all. It does not move. So I don't know why it looks like that, but that would have been pretty cool to have a little extra articulation out there. And then, of course, we've got the opposing side of the figure. You can see the head sculpt looks exactly pretty much the same as it did on the previous side. You have really nice articulation in that jaw, the beautifully painted eye. Again, there is no sloppiness to the eye paint on this Mosasaurus at all. As you move along the body, again, it looks pretty much the same as it did on the previous side. There aren't any significant differences, and considering the fact that the Mosasaurus is pretty much just like straightforward, you don't really see too much of a turn or anything in the body. You're not really going to see too much difference on this side in comparison to the initial side. It all looks pretty much the same from every vantage point, of course, until you get out here into the tail. And the tail does turn in a right-facing direction, but also kind of turns back toward its left as well. So there's a nice curve to the tail out here, which there was in the original one, but I feel like this turn in the tail definitely looks nicer than what the original one had. But again, we have that beautiful articulation out here in the tail, which I am really excited about. And there is also articulation here. As you can move this flipper up and down, it does move quite nicely. Same deal with the one on the opposing side over here. Also moves. And they can swivel as well, so you can swivel them all over the place. Same deal with the swivel up here, but these ones don't move up and down, so only the rear flippers do. And then the articulated jaw would be the final area of articulation, but the Mosasaurus looks really nice. I can definitely say that. It is nice to have a second variant of the Mosasaurus out there, especially because this one has some updated articulation. But I will say that I think the paint scheme on the original one was a little nicer than this. Now, as far as actually showing off the original Mosasaurus in comparison to this newest one, it's a little bit of a task because they're both pretty darn big and there's just generally not enough room on my review station to put them side to side. So we're going to piggyback our Mosasaurus to see how they look together. But you can see the original one is the one on the back of the newer Mosasaurus. But the newer Mosasaurus honestly almost looks like it has a little bit of a larger size to it. Like you can really see in general that the newer one appears to be a little bit bigger. I don't know if that's just my eyes playing tricks on me or not, or what exactly the deal is, but it absolutely looks like it has a little bit bigger of a body mass and potentially a little bit of a bigger head sculpt. So that is very interesting. Maybe it was upscaled a little bit for this newest release. I will say that the actual detailing here on the face absolutely looked nicer on the original one, and I don't think it's because the sculpt has been altered. I feel like it's just that the lighter coloration of the face really allowed that detail to shine through, whereas the darker coloration of the newer one doesn't quite so much. And again, you can see what I was talking about, where you have like quite a bit of extra color variation on the original one compared to the newer one, which is a little dull as far as the coloration goes. I absolutely feel like the original one looked nicer now. Seeing the two of them together, especially as far as the actual paint application goes, it looked nicer than this newest version. And you can see the difference within the tails here as well. As the original Mosasaurus's tail went up, it did not have any articulation or anything like that. The newer Mosasaurus tail has articulation and doesn't go up quite as high or anything like that. So there is quite a bit of difference between the two figures, which is really nice to see because I was at one point thinking it was going to be a straight up repaint, but luckily for us that is not the case at all. They are two very different Mosasaurus figures, and I must say I love both. Now, as far as a size goes, I already have the tape here up on the Mosasaurus because it's a little hard to measure something this large with one hand, but you can see it's about 29¼ inches long, or about 74½ centimeters. So a very, very long figure for sure. As far as a height goes, for the head, you are looking at about 5½ inches, or around 14 centimeters. And then if we bring the tail in here a little bit more, so we can get a more accurate look at the tail, to the height of the tail, you're looking at about 7½ inches, or about 19½ centimeters. For a size comparison, there is Mr. Papo T-Rex, the Attack Pack Colovosaurus, and Robert Muldoon from the Mattel Jurassic World toy line, next to our immense Mosasaurus, the Ocean Protector Mosasaurus from Mattel. And you can definitely see that, just like the original release, this Mosasaurus is massive, and this one even potentially a little more massive than the original one, and you can hopefully see that here next to these figures before you. So this brand new 2021 Dino Escape Ocean Protector Mosasaurus is definitely another really cool release from Mattel, and I am psyched to see some extra work has been put into this Mosasaurus, and it's not just a straight up repaint. And of course, that new area would be the articulation in the tail, but even the figure itself, again, just feels like it might have a little bit more body mass than the original Mosasaurus did. I will say, though, that again, paint scheme wise, it does look nice what we have here. It looks pretty good. There's just a lack of paint variation to the figure. There's not too much included, and the white speckling that is on the figure is a little overbearing in certain areas. I'm still kind of on the fence as far as how I feel about that white speckling. It's not the worst thing I've ever seen, but it's also not the most appealing thing I've ever seen. So that's, just kind of up in the air right now as far as how I feel about it. The sculpt, of course, is really nicely done. It's beautiful as far as a detailing aspect goes, and really nicely replicates the Mosasaurus from Jurassic World. So the sculpt is beautiful as usual. It was beautiful on the original version. It's beautiful on this newest version. The paint scheme, again, was more beautiful on the original one. Not as beautiful on the newer one, but still looks quite nice. And then you, of course, have lots of really fun articulation on your Mosasaurus, so that is a plus, and the newest articulation adds even a little bit more extra fun, I would say, to your Mosasaurus. The only areas that I would say are definitely a downside for me would be the very large seam in the tail. And I don't know if everybody's has this large seam, but mine is really, really noticeable. Like, the original Mosasaurus had a seam in the tail as well, but I feel like the gap wasn't quite as large as what we're seeing on this one, or again, at least on mine. So that area is a little distracting on the figure, but that's not the end of the world. The only other thing that I would really like to have seen on the figure would have been the inside of the mouth with those teeth on the upper jaw painted, but that as well is not the end of the world. So as far as the figure goes, I think overall it is definitely a nice release from Mattel. Not as nice as the original one, but still a really cool and updated version of the Mosasaurus with an alternate paint scheme and some extra articulation. So it's definitely an all-around really fun release from Mattel. So if you are interested in picking this up, I will include a link in the description to Target.com where I purchased mine. Hopefully they're still available on there. Otherwise, I know they will without question be available in store. So make sure you check either in store at Target or the link in the description to Target.com and purchase yourself this really cool Ocean Protector Mosasaurus from the Mattel Jurassic World line. And make sure you also like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you in the next review. Thanks for watching.